Okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's a Monday afternoon here in South Africa, the 14th of July at 1 p.m. So welcome to the Diversity Roundtable. I'm your host, Pamela Xaba, and today we are diving into a bold and necessary conversation on power, on purpose, and people, reimagining ICT leadership through a gendered lens. So I'm just very, very particularly excited because today joining me are two formidable leaders in technology who don't just occupy space, they transform it. So I've got Dr. Denisha Jairam-Owthar, a trailblazing CIO with a fierce commitment to digital transformation and equity. I also have Ms. Thenzie Stewart, a seasoned IT strategist and a chair of the Women in IT chapter at the Institute of IT Professionals, South Africa. She's known for her unapologetic advocacy for women in IT. So ladies, thank you both for being here. Thank you so much for making time. Like start of the week on a Monday afternoon. I mean, Dr. Denisha, I know that you said you had a board meeting and you had to excuse yourself for that board meeting just to be here with us and have this discussion. So this will be recorded and it will be put out on our social media pages. It will be put out on our buzzing YouTube channel so that we can have an opportunity to avail this recording to the wider audience in our African continent and listening to your journey and your stories of joy, of triumph, and how you overcame certain challenges as women leaders in the ICT sector. So thank you so much for both of you. So I think on a lighthearted note, please share your background, who you are, personal and professional icebreakers, whatever that you are comfortable to share, of course. And so firstly, welcome. And let's start with you, Dr. Denisha. So before we get into the discussion that I've divided into 5 segments for the ease of the flow of the discussion, tell us who Dr. Denisha is on a personal and a professional level, and then we'll move over to you, Ms. Thenzie. So over to you, Dr. Denisha.
Thank you so much, Pamela. I must say, I am so humbled to be part of this platform and to be able to share. It is such an honorable experience, and we really want to help, our young people grow in this field and continue to grow in this field. It is such an exciting field to be in technology in whatever way or form, and I'm so humbled to share my experiences. I actually am on a personal level. I'm a mother of an 8-year-old, and I enjoy my son quite a bit. A wife, a daughter, a sister, so many different roles. 22 years of IT experience. Starting off from various roles in IT across about 5 different industries. From banking to investment banking to taxation to higher education to utilities, as well as now in healthcare. I actually enjoy the field extensively. I've got several certifications and qualifications, but really, really excited to be part of a journey to build the generation that is to come in technology, to leave a legacy that people would be able to build further on. And that for me is a dear passion of mine that sits with me close to my heart. And I'm very excited to be engaging you and everybody who is listening in the session today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Denisha. I'm just so excited because I know that the points that we're going to uncover as we go on are just going to be mind-blowing. Thank you so much for being here. Over to you, Ms. Thenzie. So, Ms. Thenzie, I think, yeah, audio, I'm not sure if you're on mute or...
Can you hear me, Pam?
Yes, we can hear you now, loud and clear.
Okay.
Over to you. Yes.
No, thank you so much, Pam, for this wonderful invitation. And it's truly a privilege and an honor to be here with you and Dr. Denisha. You are two women who are phenomenal and who I've come to admire. So my journey in tech wasn't paved. It wasn't, like set in stone, like that was the route that I'm going to take. It was one that was chosen for me or dug out and by grace and a deep desire to make a difference and to be part of something bigger than myself. I come from a small community in Pretoria. I think it's the only colored community in Pretoria, where opportunities were very limited, but at least we have big dreams and that can come true. I had no early exposure to computers or anything tech related, but a trainee opportunity opened up for me, and I just ran through that door once it was opened. So career-wise, I have about 2.5 decades experience within the ICT field, having done various roles, being a technician, a developer, project management, systems, ERP systems. So it's quite diverse. And I've moved from learning just to log into a system or into a computer to leading major digital transformation projects. And now also recently an additional role that I've stepped into is the Women in IT Chapter Chair of the IITPSA, that's the Institute of IT Professionals. But more than my titles, I'm also someone that has a heart for service. I'm also a proud mother of two, a 9-year-old and a 15-year-old who challenge me and who ground me. A wonderful, supportive husband. We've been married for 19 years this year. So in November, we're going to hit the 19-year mark, which has also come with its own challenges and tribulations, but most of all, joys and growth and learning and love. And I'm also a very, grounded woman in faith. So that's very important to me, my faith. I'm Christian. And that's very important for me. So, yeah, that's basically who I am in a nutshell. And I hope that we're going to have a productive and a fulfilling discussion today. Thank you so much, Pam.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Thenzie. It's just really, really humbling to just listen to both of your intros and, what remarkable ladies you are, in this field, and just really that are open also to giving back. I mean, as we were chatting earlier, we did say that also it's Mandela Month. So we will take this as our 67 minutes of giving back. As I mentioned earlier, as we're prepping, that really the reason why we started this platform was really to inspire young professionals on the continent, African continent, inspire up-and-coming entrepreneurs also in this sector in technology to say, listen to these remarkable women, their joys, their wins, and how they overcame challenges, so that we continue to reinforce in their minds that you can really be anything that you put your mind into, despite the challenges that we all encounter along the journey. So thank you so much. So let's kick into our discussion, starting off with segment 1, which I have termed Rethinking Leadership Models, right? So let's begin really with the heart of leadership. Both of you are known for wearing empathy, or for weaving empathy rather, people first thinking and strategic foresight in the ICT transformation. So kicking off with you, Dr. Denisha, how did you begin to even reimagine leadership when you entered spaces that may not have really expected or welcomed the kind of voice that you have today? So talk us through your journey in this context.
Sure. Thank you so much. I think it's such a reflective question, and it's so important because, as a young woman entering the space, it was very, very challenging, very daunting, something completely new. And I think what you begin to realize is you learn about yourself. And yes, understanding that, yes, asking the questions, being resourceful, trying to put the pieces together, where, some people would want to share, others may not want to share, but really coming with this, this tapestry of understanding that, you really want to know. You are authentically curious, and it's okay if you don't know. It's okay to ask, and there's no such thing as a silly question. Every question has got some sort of value, whether it's to yourself or to the group, the teams, the managers. I think one thing that's really kept me grounded is to not lose who I am. It was very, very difficult to navigate through some of those items and elements that, questioning the status quo, to say, but wait a minute, can we do it this way? And really, unraveling that part, because when you're not afraid to do that and ask it, although in some instances or in some scenarios, um, you got to ask the question, but maybe ask it in a way that would not be, overbearing on many, but really showing them, I really want to understand. I really want to know. I really want to be able to integrate and put these pieces together. It's coming from a very honest intent. You really want to be able to create that lens to say, this is why I'm asking. I want to make a difference in my role. I want to make a difference in what I'm doing. I want to be able to see what I'm doing bring some tangible impact to your space, your organization, your business unit, the department, whatever you want to call it. So really, for me, it was, staying true to me and understanding and really trying to convey that message, to say, I'm asking, I'm trying to piece this together. The intent is honest and authentic, because I want to make that impact, because I find reflection is so important. Every 6 months to a year, we all have performance scorecards at work, but who has the
Yep.
performance scorecard for you as a person? And what difference did you make to you? And I think that's very, very critical, because, we always have struggle with, balancing as women in this sector, as people in the sector. We give our heart and soul to everything we do. But what about that scorecard about you, in terms of your health, your well being, your exercise, your reflection time, because you need all of those pieces to have an holistic you, holistically. So I think that has really kept me grounded over the years. I still do it now. I have a personal performance scorecard for me, that I reflect on every 6 months. And I find that so important to look at, to say, in whatever role I'm in, did I bring something in? Did they feel my presence? If
Yep.
not, what needs to change? What am I not doing well? What am I doing well? What do I need to stop, start, and continue? So it's really that self check inside, and also making sure your the people that you trust around you, your mentors. I think mentorship is so important. The people that would
Yep.
be honest to you and say, listen, but maybe you could have done it like this or that. Maybe, why don't you try this? That didn't work too well. And that part is so critical. Those key alliances. One of them is people close to you, people you look up to, people you can learn from, family. My sense check and soundboard sometimes is my husband, who's dearly supported me through many, many challenges, and being able to sound things and bounce things off him is so, so important. And likewise, as Thenzie has spoken about faith-wise, too, I'm also Christian. I love going into that special place and reflecting and, getting that direction and fulfillment from the inside. So, yeah.
Yo, I'm almost having goosebumps just listening to you. So, because it just confirms in my mind that we're not only just professionals. So, it's very important also to be a well-rounded human being, right? So, from the head, heart to spiritual, but also making sure that you've got a sound supportive system at home to actually that helps you to show up, and just really also personal accountability, that your own personal performance contract to give yourself a mirror and say, look, what have I done? How did I do this quarter? How did I do in this 6 months? So it just really shows that blend of EQ as well as digital mastery in terms of where you are in the professional space that you occupy is really, really, really powerful, because it just informs how you show up as a holistic human being. Thank you so much, Dr. Denisha, for that. So, Ms. Thenzie, your leadership spans over decades, as you're introducing yourself. So how has your approach evolved from traditional systems thinking to something more collaborative, more inclusive, and dare I say disruptive in certain instances? So over to you.
No, thanks, Pam. And yes, I definitely carry the sentiments of Dr. Denisha. I actually made a personal note here to have my own personal performance contract when it comes to myself, as well as to my career and my leadership. And I think my holistic life, what a wonderful initiative to implement. But on traditional systems, I think by nature, I'm quite traditional. I won't lie. I value structure. I like processes, and I value accountability. And I believe in doing things properly, and respecting protocols and building systems that are sustainable. But my leadership is mainly deeply rooted in, where I have that servant leadership and also to have that adaptive leadership style. So over the years, I've come to realize that, what, true leadership isn't about standing at the top, of the hierarchy and being in charge. It's actually about just flipping that hierarchy upside down and to empower and to listen, to grow with others. And that's where I find that adaptive leadership style comes in. It's a framework that allows us to, to invite us to recognize, old rules don't always work anymore, and they also no longer serve us as human beings, and to lead in ways that are more responsive, that are flexible, and that carrying on the sentiment of Dr. Denisha, that are more human-centered, because I think we falter so much in leaving the human element behind. So a real shift for me personally in my journey is when it started, when I started challenging, that rigid structure that I sometimes also still love. And that command culture is, especially in the ICT world, I've seen too often, sometimes you find that there are junior staff or people reporting to you or people in your teams that are discouraged to engage executives. The expectation is everything should go through your manager and you should follow the command of chain. And you even see that mindset in everyday life. You'll find that you're in a shop or a restaurant, or even, calling a service provider, and you have a question, or you want to change something, or you want to inquire about something, and you hear the person saying, I first need to speak to my manager, or let me confirm with the manager, or let me call my manager. And then you find that they have the knowledge, they have the understanding, they have the information. It's just that fear of sharing or giving that answer because of the reprimand that would come, after that, after giving a response. But they have that knowledge. It's just that they don't have the permission to give that knowledge. But that model for me is definitely, it's outdated and sometimes can be damaging. I mean, if you run a business, you could lose customers. If you think about it in, for example, healthcare, a nurse having to make a quick decision could, someone's life could depend on it. So that's why in my own teams, I feel that it's important that you give them that opportunity to present, to talk, to engage, to lead in projects, because you find that, these people are the ones that help you to succeed and help you to deliver and make that difference. So adaptive leadership teaches us that leadership is not just about, being in charge and having all of the answers. It's about, mobilizing people to thrive in times of challenge and to step into those roles that they may not feel ready for, but that they can actually do. And I often remind myself as well that growth is really, neat or predictable, but it's always, always worth it. Thank you so much, Pam.
No, thank you, Ms. Thenzie. And really, the times have changed. So these leadership models that maybe some of us, we grew up on, and just this type of rigid lifestyle or leadership style rather, is really, really outdated. And more, I mean, we see more and more young people being vocal about how they'd like to be led, and they've got their own minds and like to do things a certain way. Especially with you ladies, in the technology sector, so much in your roles, how technology drives, in terms of how people interact at work and whatnot. But not forgetting that, technology does not replace the human brain. Surely.
Yes.
So human beings are still human beings, and they will think and say how they feel. So it's important then that we continue to cultivate that safe or psychologically safe leadership model into the future. So thank you so much, ladies, for that segment. So let's move on to segment 2, and let's really unpack, really what are some of the unseen burdens, So let's really talk about what's invisible but deeply felt, also in the context of culture, right, in these industries, the burdens that women carry in the ICT sector, but obviously not just limited to the ICT sector, from isolation at the top to navigating power dynamics, all of young people, sometimes they don't know how to show up, and they're so young in their careers that sometimes it's a case of you don't know what you don't know. Sometimes you get that degree, you get that, MBA, and you think, yeah, you know what? I have studied, I've got this, and you hit the reality of the workplace and you're like, oh, I was not prepared for this. It happens. So, Dr. Denisha, with that context, in terms of the unseen burdens, you've really been vocal also when it comes to women issues about really re-onboarding women post-maternity. What systems need dismantling or rethinking when it comes to just the unseen burdens for female leaders, or even just females entering the industry, based on your experience?
Sure. Thank you so much. What a profound question. I think, for me, I had such a experience when I had my son. People had expected me to, the work was lying and expected me to come back to work and just carry on as normal. And I made a promise to myself that day, and I thought, I will never allow this to happen to another woman wherever I go, and be able to change that. Because when you're a mom, or you become a new mom, or you become a mom for the second time, third time, whatever the context may be, you should never be able to just come back to work and just feel it was as it was before. And because you are going through so many changes, as a new mother, as a mother again, whatever the context is, that you need time to almost be reorientated into the workplace, whereby you need to catch up with where's the organization now. You've been away for 4 months, whatever the time frame was. And there's a lot to catch up with, especially in technology, because you need to understand what has happened, what has changed, how do we move, or things like that. And I think the expectation is, here we go, that's the work, carry on. But there's no reorientation to her to say, this is now how we've moved. This is where we were, and 4 months ago or 3 months ago, whatever the time period, and this is how things have changed. And I think that is an element that so many organizations miss, because of the fact that the expectation is, come back and you will perform as you were before the 4 months or 3 months. And I think that for me, that's a rethinking that needs to happen, because wherever I've now gone in my organizations, I've made sure that those parts of the HR policy are inclusive, to say, if there is a mum that comes back after her maternity leave, can there be some sort of time period to reorientate her back into where we are? Can the expectations be different from her peers and her line, so that she is reorientated back into the workplace in a fair way, in an equitable way, because her body has been through a lot, her mind has been through a lot. There's a whole lot of changes that is happening physiologically in a woman's body, at home, because now there's different support mechanisms that are needed, and allow her that time. And I think that is one of the systemic things I see, in many organizations, where we need to allow that. And the KPIs, her performance scorecard, needs to also reflect that, to say she's been away for 3 or 4 months, whatever the time period is, and let's now take that into account and not expect her to perform the way she did before she went on maternity leave. And I think that is a reform, an empathy, an element of empathy that organizations need to have. We cannot be made to feel guilty because we bring life into this world, because of corporate careers that are moving, irrespective of whether you're there or not there. And therefore, it's important to have some sort of time period, HR policies that support that reorientation back into the workplace. And I find that so important. Another element that comes to my mind extensively so is, as women, we are wired very differently, and we're very passionate about what we want to say and how we say it. And sometimes I find, or I found, in meetings and so forth, when we're passionate, the passion comes out in your voice, to say, listen, guys, hold on. I'm not understanding this, or help me, bring me along in this. And a lot of the time, people say, no, you can't, calm down. And I look at them and I say, hold on, guys. I will not apologize for being a woman and how passionate I am about this specific aspect that we are discussing. Let me first start there. So that passion comes out in us as women. That's how we're wired. And it should never be mistaken for being impulsive or over emotional. I'm a woman, I'm allowed to be emotional, and I will not apologize for that. So therefore, we need to make the boardrooms, the meetings, the male alliances understand that we are women. This is how we're wired. We are there. This is passion coming out in me. And let's not quieten the passion because you're not used to that. Let's allow the passion to say, okay, I hear you. And I can understand how passionate you are about it, which is a beautiful thing. It should never be frowned upon. And I find that, those kind of subtleties, they are there. They are unheard of. They exist. And I've also realized I will not change who I am to suit a situation just because the situation was never used to having a passionate woman there to make the decisions or deliberate or debate or whatever the case may be. Obviously, in a professional and in a diplomatic way, but let's not apologize for being passionate as women.
Oh, really, really, what profound words of wisdom, Dr. Denisha, because at the end of the day, we are who we are, right? It's really, making sure that we are allowed the space to be authentically ourselves, obviously in whatever context that one operates in. And we shouldn't really shy away from, really the issues that impact women. So, Ms. Thenzie, just building on what Dr. Denisha has given us, what has been your experience in this space? Maybe share one or two, some of the challenges and how you've overcome them, just in the context of what are these unseen burdens that women carry? Ms. Thenzie, just check your audio. Okay, we still can't hear you.
Oh, my word.
Okay, there you
Can you hear
go.
me?
Now we've got
Yes, can
yes.
you hear me now?
Okay,
Okay, my
yes. Yeah,
apologies, ladies.
yeah.
I think my mic wants me to sit on top of it. My apologies.
No worries.
But carrying Dr. Denisha's sentiments, definitely, it brings to mind, BCX recently, I saw an article where they have actually rolled out 12 days of feminine leave. And I'm thinking, oh, shucks, I wish it was rolled out during my time, when I was a bit younger. I'm still very young, though. I'm turning 45 at the end of the year, but, even a bit younger, when your body is changing and adapting, I think that would have been so great. But I do commend them for that, because for the up and coming females, that leave days, I think it's going to be so important and so critical. And it's just such a wonderful initiative that they've started. And I think even for us women, as you're going to go and transition, I think in a couple of years' time, I'll have a flip over, not being as young, but transitioning, into a higher authority of womanhood. That is what I would call it, not an older woman, just a higher authority of womanhood. And
Your full
those type of
womanhood, that's
leave
what I
days,
call it.
yes. So those type of leave days will actually come in quite handy. And I hope that more organizations will come to the party in terms of that. But in terms of the challenges that I faced, I think, I often say, being a woman is challenging. Now, being a woman in tech is also just as challenging. It feels like, you're climbing up this hill. But being a woman of color in tech is even more so challenging. It feels like you're climbing that hill with weights on the sides that you have to carry. And there's that quiet expectation where you have to, prove yourself. You have to work twice as hard. That's what I always say to most females, and females of color, that you have to work twice as hard to prove your worth, and you can't fail. That is not an option. And that's a standard of the world. But I think we've accepted, that you can make mistakes, and we learn from our mistakes and we grow from that. But if you are in that space, and from my experience, it's like you can't fail. Even today, I said I've been 2.5 decades within this space and within this industry. I still question myself, am I good enough? Am I speaking well? Am I not sounding too African or too colored in my accent? People tend to, and I think the business world look at accentism as well. I recently did a speech on that, where you are questioned, where your intelligence is gauged by how well you speak the Queen's English. And that is another challenge and dynamic that we're faced with as women in tech and women in color, because everybody expects you, to speak so well, and or according to their measurements, that you have to speak a certain way and have to carry yourself a certain way. And that's where your passion comment comes in, Dr. Denisha, that sometimes it's like you're overbearing, you're a bit too much, in those spaces. But I think it's important to know who you are, because, your color and your background and your culture, it's part of your story. It's where you come from. And that story actually paves the way for other girls and women that look like you and that want to be in this space. So, yes, we stumble and we are being undermined and sometimes overlooked as well. And, you are boxed into that stereotype, but it's sometimes difficult, to walk tall, and to carry yourself that way. And I've learned that, what, show up for yourself, and, walk tall, put on those heels and put on that red lipstick. It's something that I've learned from one of the other ladies, that, what, put on that red lipstick and really, show up as yourself in that particular space and in that boardroom, not to prove the men in that particular boardroom wrong, but
Yeah.
to prove yourself right. That's what you need to look for. And in terms of men, we can see that the world was designed by men and for men. And now we at least have that opportunity to change that narrative, to change the conversation, and to change the world to be more inclusive, to consider the female, perspective and the female narrative. And we can only do that if we work together and if we stand together and if we support one another and provide each other with that blueprint, to pave that way for others that are behind us or are following. Thanks, Pam.
Sure, ladies, what a wealth and a wealth of information, and just how authentic you just really articulate these unseen burdens, because they really affect a lot of women, especially also young women who haven't really particularly found their voices, around these issues. So I think it is just very, very critical that, we continue to raise, powerful voices such as yourself, so that we share the message far and wide in the continent, really, about what it really, really means to show up for yourself authentically. So with your accents, what's and all, but obviously, as Dr. Denisha said, in a very, very diplomatic way. So let's talk about in this segment then the power of the boardroom, right? So we've got a lady here, Dr. Denisha, who had to excuse herself from a board meeting just to be here. So let me then kick off with you, and I'll come back to you, Ms. Thenzie, on this segment, the power of the boardroom. So, Dr. Denisha, you've often said boards need digital fluency, right? So I think I've listened to you a couple of platforms with Board Academy Africa, the Future Lounge that we both attended. But how do we make the language of tech accessible enough for boards to lead wisely? What does this mean to you, this question?
Sure. Thank you so much. Such an important question. I think because, the boards are really the navigators, in terms of the guidance that we have to provide to the organization and the CEO and the management team and so forth. So I think the first barrier is when boards say or feel tech is too technical. And as soon as we lift that off,
Yeah.
then you begin to see different things, because we are all placed in a situation, all organizations, public sector, private sector, we are ordained now to do more with less. How do you do more with less? And that it boils down to technology, to be able to do that in an efficient and an effective way. So the more the boards say or feel, you know, IT technology is too technical for us, the more further away they move from, what needs to happen in the organization. And I'll speak about some of my experiences because, when we relate the technology of an organization to what you might personally experience, and I use this all the time because a lot of the boards, they say, this is too technical. I'm not, let's leave it in the subcommittee, the IT subcommittee. And I say, but hang on, what is architecture? If you had a phone and you've got all, Apple appliances in your home, and suddenly you buy a Samsung, what does that mean for you personally?
Mm,
So
mm,
same principle would mean now we are, a Microsoft house, for example, and we're now buying a piece of technology that could be Oracle or SAP or whatever. What does
mm,
that now mean to your technology stack? And that is what, we need to bring it down to that to help them understand principally what's happening. Because many a times we, we miss that. And it becomes, it's not even the language, it is the understanding of what's actually happening. And boards must not be afraid because myself as a group CIO, you still have to keep up. Technology is a space where you have to keep up. It is the name of the game. You can't
mm,
be able to say, oh well, I have a PhD in IT and that's enough. No, I've continued to carry on because technology is carrying on. So my advice to the boards would be have continuous incubators,
mm,
technology incubators that would take them into the leaps of what's happening in technology. I see a lot of examples in South Africa that people are speaking about artificial intelligence, the what it is, and so forth, and many organizations, implement a chatbot and think, oh, we've got AI. Absolutely not. You've got a shard of AI, but there is so much more, and you've got to think now. How do you get an understanding principally of what's happening, so that you can ask the right questions as a board up there so that you can guide the organization effectively. So it is incumbent of all board members, public and private sector, to keep up to date with technology because this is the era we're in. And a lot of the times, I was very young when I walked into my first board, and they had stereotyped me, to say, oh, she doesn't know. She might not know. But when I had empowered myself to read about the organization, to go find out, to ask the curious questions, to tie up the technologies that this organization could be exposed to in the near future, uh, needs to be aware of in the near future, and so forth. You need to have techniques. We can't allow the stereotype molds, that they mold you in. You're too young, you might not
mm,
understand, you're a woman, and when you make that profound impact to say, but hang on, did you think of this, CIO? Do you understand why did you choose that and not this? Help me
mm,
understand your roadmap. And so it's not techie questions, it is principal questions on technology that you need to, as a board member, empower yourself with digitally, because we are in a digital era. All boards should be continuously incubated with technology to say, this is where it's going. Do we need a technology platform to do software development right now? Absolutely not, because we've got Google Colab, which is completely free. How do we do what is going to be the role of your software developers now that we have every single piece of code available? Do
Yeah.
we need them? How can we repurpose them into things that could be more meaningful? So those are principal questions. If they understand principally what's happening, they don't have to be coders. They don't need to understand those elements, but principally, and those continuous and frequent technological incubators are going to help them do that. So I really, really encourage that, on boards in this country and in Africa, because the opportunities are absolutely endless. With boards being the apex of organizations and them being able to drive the guidance going forward.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Denisha, for breaking down that for us in terms of, the power of digital fluency for boards and how they should really show up in this space. So building on that, Ms. Thenzie, in the context of the power of the boardroom, so how do we then make sure that ICT strategies are not just digitally sound, but that they are also socially just? So what is your take on that? So let's check your audio again, Ms. Thenzie.
Hi.
Yes, there you go.
There we go. Okay. So I think for too long, the digital strategy has been seen as purely a technical function. We deploy the tools, we ensure that there's uptime, and we tick all of the compliance boxes. But I believe that, digital transformation must be rooted in social transformation as well. So when I think and when I serve on governance panels or lead, ICT strategy, we need to advocate for inclusion by design. So that means making fairness, a KPI. It needs to be a key performance indicator that, the systems that we design and that we develop are in essence fair. And also whether it's when we choose, vendors to partner with us, and I think allocating a training budget, we need to, build in that fairness and that social inclusion, or when we build platforms or, social justice and equity must be built into those types of processes. And it mustn't just be an afterthought. I think if we look at BEE within our country, when we do, ICT procurement, that is a key driver. And sometimes we find, that these vendors or suppliers or service providers that we work with are not always up to scratch. And, the other market, gets or has that advantage. So it comes to that empowerment of those types of organizations. And that is where the board comes in, as Dr. Denisha alluded, where they need to have that sense of expertise and they need to, filter that knowledge through to, the CEOs, to the executive, to the people that make the decisions, and to the implementers. So with that knowledge and that, trail that filters through, we can just make so much more powerful impact and more powerful decisions. On projects that I've worked on, where you truly interrogate, that system access, that procurement equity, and look at that representation, especially when you draft the contracts or in contracting opportunities. So you can't just say, we're going to digitize this old system and then call it transformation. You have to interrogate, who is this system going to work for? And who does it exclude, this particular system? I've seen how, for example, board members, when given the right data, stories, visuals, and dashboards, they start to understand, that equity isn't just something for HR. it's something for everybody. It's a leadership concern, and that is something that needs to be built into these systems. So it's a leadership imperative. My saying always is that, digitally mature boards must also be ethically mature. And that's where our ethics conversation comes in, and where Dr. Denisha touched on, the AI segment of the conversation. And a leader is not one who just, knows the way. It's one that also goes the way and also shows the way. And for our boards, we definitely need to be more, digitally savvy, and to learn what is out there, how the markets are changing, and what is happening, and what's being innovated, and how we can filter that through and bring it back to organizations.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I like the phrase or the sentence where you mentioned that when we're implementing systems and ICT strategies, we need to think beyond that to say, who is this, process going to impact? Are those people really trained, or are there's, so there's really also communication, because being a tech guru is not just sitting behind a laptop, and obviously creating systems and things. It's also, to have a very strong social skills and communication skills, because the people that are going to be using the systems that you design need to understand exactly the problems that you're trying to solve for. So also then communication skills and social skills in terms of interpersonal skills is also very critically important. Which then leads me then to segment 4, when we also then start to talk about people in the context of mentorship, in the context of talent pipelines, and also building communities, and as well as professional communities. And it's really, really one of my favorite topics, mentorship, because also in our career journeys, we've had people that saw the potential in us, mentored us, and opened doors to access to some of the rooms that would never have thought that will even occupy, especially for young women and girls, right? So staying with you, Ms. Thenzie, as a chair of Women in IT, you've led programs really that demystify tech for girls. So maybe talk to us briefly about what's working in the space and what are the barriers that are still, in our way.
Thanks for that, Pam. Yes, joining the Women in IT chapter of the IITPSA was truly a defining moment for me. It wasn't easy. I'll admit, when I was selected as chair, the chapter had been dormant for a while, to be honest with you. So there was no active community, there was no momentum. And I think many assumed, and, especially our male counterparts, that, what will quietly disappear and, not resuscitate the chapter at all. But I saw potential, and I definitely saw a purpose, especially when it comes to mentorship. So what we did is we created a passionate team of women. We gathered a committee and we started rebuilding from scratch. And that is where that blueprint comes in, especially when it comes to mentorship as well, Pam. I think many a time, you find that something has been built or implemented, but there's nothing for the person that comes after you. And that is so frustrating. And the key thing is to have those blueprints available for the next generation or the person that comes after you, that they don't have to go through the same struggles and reinventing the wheel, but actually just build on what you have created or what is there, and truly make a difference, and, truly become innovative, because it's difficult to be innovative when you have to, every time redo something or restart it or reinvent that wheel. So innovation will be built on that premise that, what, I already have that blueprint available, and I can just build on it. So we started hosting webinars, just to get some of the women in IT involved and in the ICT sector. We've also started with school outreach programs just to, show that young girl, what's working in terms of representation. When people see, when young girls see people like Dr. Denisha or myself, they believe that, what, it's possible. I can do this, especially in our rural and previously disadvantaged or currently still disadvantaged community that we have. But the other thing is that we need more than inspiration. We need to have structured programs, and that is what we're looking to build with, within WIT, to give people those frameworks to actually grow that mentorship space and really empower the girls and to show them that it is possible, to succeed and to thrive in the ICT as well as in the STEM world. And we need, real investment. And we also need our government, to come to the party to really, make use of programs and, make use of people like myself, Dr. Denisha, to implement such programs. There's so many people that are willing, that are able, so many organizations that are also able. It's just that we need to, find those doors and get those opportunities started to really, bring in the girls into this space and to show them that it's possible. And if you think in terms of ICT, when we think about infrastructure in ICT, our infrastructure is the backbone of our entire ICT ecosystem. So if we think about it, when it comes to mentorship, mentorship is that infrastructure for sustainable inclusion for those young girls and to show them that it is possible.
Sure. Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We are really, really so honored and so privileged to have such a wealth of information on this call. And I'm just particularly excited for people that are going to listen to this recording. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, coming from all corners of our continent, and as we promote this on our social media platforms. So thank you so much, ladies. So just to maybe close off this segment, Dr. Denisha, just around mentorship. What does this mean? Because, in your research in academia, so what does this really mean in the context of how do we then build these pipeline strategies and just to make sure that it's also mentorship is used in this sector as a way to protect women's joy? Whatever that means, obviously, in their context, not just progress, because obviously mentorship, sometimes we think about it just for the professional context, but the role of really research, academia in this context.
Sure. I think it's such an important part because I always feel, the day I retire from the sector, what's really going to light up my heart is the people and the women and the girls and even the men that we, leave something with them. It's not going to be the last meeting pack and which system did I implement, but the people impact that are really going to bring that joy, to say we've made a difference, in people's lives. I think, in technology, because it's moving so quickly, there has to be a very important bridge between research and what's happening on the ground. So part of some of the initiatives that I'm working on, like Thenzie had said, is to mentor some of these young girls coming through from even high school, to be able to say to them, STEM and technology is something that we can really, look to for a career, for a path. It is not something to be afraid of, or to think, to put boundaries in your mind before you even understand what the field is about. So we've got to be, as female leaders, as leaders as a whole, is to help young people realize that. And we've got to do it intentionally, deliberately, go out there in the schools, go out there in various, platforms, mediums, and help them get the message across to say it is doable. Look at me. I came from an old farm town that didn't even understand. I didn't even understand what careers were.
Mm,
And here am, and it's, so they need to believe in those things and not build barriers in their own minds before they even come through to, those career decision making elements. So that's the one thing. And when we pipeline, do it together collaboratively, so we build this belt, conveyor belt I always refer to. It's not done in silos, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's done by the hundreds, because that's what we need. We need by the hundreds. If you look at some of our IT spend, I mean, I've never walked into an IT department where we've ever had enough money for technology. There's always, technology is moving. There's always something new. You always want to get, the latest elements, and sometimes it's possible and sometimes it's not. So we really have to look at, what are we going to leave with them? And for example, what we're doing is I'm now busy with a memorandum of understanding with all the 26 universities in the country, whereby all the research topics that we feel that we need
mm,
as in the industry right now, we're able to convey that to the various universities, and they're able to then do those research in an African context. We need our African context. We need the South African context. We need the African context when we implement these technologies, because many a times, and that's going to build the confidence of Africa, because we look to the developed world, which is absolutely great to do so. But sometimes there are challenges in our country or in Africa that the developed world may not have had. So if we are
mm,
implementing, a cloud solution, or, a data, an AI piece, how many women are included in that data to provide the output that we need to see, in terms of the research? And what I found, because I'm affiliated with the universities as well,
mm,
with some of the top 5 in the country, where the students are afraid to do technological research because they do not
mm,
know how they're going to get the data. Who's going to answer their questionnaire? They don't have the industry links that we do. So basically, that now will create the bridge to say, CIOs or technology leaders, give us your top 10 topics that you wish you knew more about. And we give it to them. And then the universities go research it over a few months for us and come back with the outputs and give it to us to say, this is what we found. And are more than willing to answer their questionnaires, because we are then able to create technology in the African context, technological research, because that is what we need. So that is an initiative that I'm working on, and really want to open the gateways to be able to produce, research that could be very, very contextualized for our context, to say we have a lot of different systems. What are the best integration tools? That, whichever sector, the healthcare sector uses, or the banking sector uses, what worked, what didn't work, and so forth. So, that piece of tacit knowledge is something that we need to create, we need to harness, we need the younger generation to help us find, and also be able to use that in a practical, pragmatic way to bring value to our organizations. Where we could, for example, one of the students, actually have a couple of students, I say to them, how do we incorporate artificial intelligence, into a South African or an African organization? We don't have the funds to have separate teams implement these strategies. So how do we take
mm,
AI and integrate it into the existing digital strategies that we already have? And those are some of the, research initiatives in the African and South African context that we need. We, for example, sit with audit plans that are the same year in and year out.
mm,
And I'm
mm,
saying, but guys, hang on, my technology stack is not the same. So how come the audit plan is still the same? Can we please, upgrade ourselves and be able to say, now that you've implemented AI in this new technology, how do you audit that? How do we then say the data sets coming out of that are actually equitable? They do include women. There are outputs on that research that have, a good balance of a stratified population. So there's so many elements that we could, be able to align and realign for there to be ethical considerations when it comes to, research, academia, and making it very practical for us because that's what we need as well in the industry. Thank you.
No, I'm just really, really, really at a loss for words. And, just if I were to summarize this, is really, the role of research, in the African context when it comes to really mentorship. And, it's just very, very important that we make these topics that may, from an untrained eye, seem a bit abstract. We make them really, really relatable. And I like the fact that you continue really to emphasize that in the African and the South African context. Because really, I think in the platforms and the communities, and I'm sure you'd attest to this, Ms. Thenzie, as well, with your role in Women in Tech, that, our young people, they really, really would love to see, either people that look like them or research that relates to their context in terms of communities so that they can solve the real issues that they see in their communities, also in the African context, professionally as well as on a personal level. So ladies, it is now really 2:10. So let's enter our final and our closing segment so that at least we leave at least about 5 minutes for people in the call to just ask some questions if they have any. So really this final segment will just really highlight the future vision and then just some closing reflections. Ms. Thenzie, we are really in a season where everything is up for redesign, so I think we've got AI jargon coming out of our ears, even in the social context. So if you were to really reimagine ICT leadership from scratch, considering where we are, what's the first thing that you would rebuild? Just briefly.
Pamela, I think what I would ask is, what does it mean to lead in the digital age? Not just, efficiency, but also about equity and equitability. So I think leadership is not just, about being in charge and being the boss. It's also about caring for those people that you are in charge of, your team and people that report to you. So ICT leaders are stewards, we look after the influence, the information, the innovation, but above all that, we also look after the people. So if we rebuild leadership around trust and around purpose, around service, I think everything else will definitely follow. So you can't really teach someone to care. It's something that is, innate within them and something that has to come from themselves. So we've built systems, many times that, reward your technical expertise, but we've neglected the character. And I would definitely rebuild ICT leadership, around character more so than the credentials that you have, because competence without compassion can also sometimes be dangerous, and it's things that we have to look at in terms of leadership and what we're trying to drive forward. So I would rebuild leadership at the heart, looking at the heart of leadership, a heart that listens before it codes or develops something or creates something. So the future of ICT doesn't, necessarily just need more power. I think it would need more purpose in essence, so that we can lead with integrity and that we can innovate and have, that innovation that includes, that looks at inclusivity, and for us also just in essence to serve with grace. For example, if you look at the conversations that you touched on in terms of AI governance, one does get concerns about, whose information is being used, to create these models and to craft these algorithms, and whose voices are being listened to. And that's where that African and South African context in conversation comes in, that are missing from that developmental table, to say that we need to include these voices as part of the development process and as part of the conversation. So Africa cannot just be a source of data. We must also be the authors of that story and of those algorithms. And, we must be the coders. We must also critique it, and we must also become the stewards of that data, because more often than not, we are normally just the givers, and we sit and we just receive and just, absorb that information instead of giving, being part of that narrative and writing that story. So we need to build tech that reflects us as Africans and as people of color, and not just our ambitions. So, as Steve Jobs says, the people who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are generally the ones that do. And as Africans, it's time to tap into our crazy, if I can put it that way.
Let's all go crazy.
Yes.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I think in that crazy comment, Ms. Thenzie, I would just also like to is that sometimes, our young people, and we just wait for permission, we wait for permission to show up, we wait for permission to do things. And so I think that's how I would translate that crazy comments that you made, that you do not need permission to show up. And actually, it also, reinforces in my mind, because at some point, the younger version of me was just really, really so scared of rejection. I would ask, and if I get a no, I would keep quiet and never ask again. So I think we need to then just encourage, our young people that, if you ask a couple of doors, and that door, that way you are supposed to walk in, will open for you. So just don't be afraid or seek permission to show up. Everyone is scared, to be quite honest. There's a lot happening in the world, but we are all really trying to do our best with what we have. So thank you so much for that. And in closing, Dr. Denisha, so some closing reflections. What do you want young women listening today, or that will listen to this recording in the African continent, to remember about power and purpose in the context of everything that we have discussed?
Sure. Thank you so much. I think, power and purpose is a journey. It's never an end point. It's never static. And I think just thinking about it, technology is so limitless, and so are we as human beings. We are only confined by the boundaries that we create in our own minds. And I think when we begin to realize how powerful we are inside, in terms of purpose, going forward, as a young woman, as a young African, as a young South African, when you realize, the beauty and the power that's put on inside of you, and that together with, if you choose the field of technology, that is such a powerful combination, because technology is limitless, as you can see with all the AI and everything that's coming out. And so are we as human beings. So if you actually bring those two together, it actually, it makes such a powerful combination, that it can become unstoppable, because it's an unending journey, both put together. And I think as Africans and as South Africans, I always see myself as an African first, because I'm a third generation, in South Africa. And, we need that confidence as Africans to say that this is our time. Africa is a
Yep.
continent that has got the biggest number of young people coming out of it, the future generations coming out of it. We've got a large amount of challenges ahead of us. And if we use technology in the right way, we could actually close that gap in a very short space of time where we've always been behind, and be able to now get on par and probably lead other continents as well. So therefore, let's get that confidence. Let's, like
Yep.
you said, and Thenzie has said, that confidence, that craziness, that confidence again, to say we can do this as Africa, as South Africa. We know our context. We are confident young people. We can use technology to fix our challenges and leapfrog ahead. So yeah, that's basically my closing comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies. So as we close, let me just check in the call if anyone has questions or comments for the people that managed to join us. So thank you so much, Chantal. Thank you so much, Memory, for staying on and listening to this conversation that is recorded, that will also go onto our social media platforms for the wider reach, and make sure that it falls on the ears that it's intended for our young people on the African continent. So do you have any questions or input or comments? Please unmute yourselves for Dr. Denisha and Thenzie. Please also follow them online and engage with them online, LinkedIn, and engage with them as well. So do you have any questions or comments before we close? Okay, so thank you so much. Thank you so much. So Ms. Thenzie, just closing reflections, just following up on what Dr. Denisha has said, just briefly, 1 minute, and then we can close the call. And thank you so much for coming through. Let's check that audio again.
Can you hear me?
Yep, there you go.
Okay. Thank you so much, Pam. And thank you for the ladies that joined. And yes, definitely to every young woman out there, and who's going to listen to the recording as you've indicated, just know that you know what, you have nothing to prove, but everything to gain. And you also only have something to become, to become you and to grow yourself. So lead with others in mind. As I said, I think right in the beginning that don't make people that come after you struggle, lead with them in mind and leave them that template or that blueprint that they can use. And let your purpose be loud, speak loudly, show yourself, show up for yourself, show up for others, and, take up the spaces unapologetically, and, know your worth and know who you are, and know that you belong. And just wishing everyone just all success, in the journey as we all try to be better people and better human beings and creating those inclusive spaces. Thank you so much, Pam.
Thank you. Thank you to you both, Dr. Denisha and Thenzie. Really, this has been a layered and a moving and a deeply practical discussion. And we are just really grateful for your presence. And thank you for giving on your time on a Monday, out of all days, on a Monday. So to our listeners, really, the departure point here is that let's please reimagine your leadership, reclaim your story, and remember, technology will only be as just or just as good as in the hands that shape it. So on that note, please follow us on our social media. More especially, this recording will be uploaded on our YouTube channel called the Diversity Roundtable. And you can also then follow Dr. Denisha and Ms. Thenzie on LinkedIn. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day and the afternoon further. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Pam. Thanks, everyone.